Why was everyone laughing at her? The insult landed sharp, cutting through the dry salt air of like shrapnel. You can hold the spotter scope, Grandma. Try not to drop it. A ripple of snickers followed, bouncing from one muscle-thick candidate to the next, the sound of young men who thought they already knew everything worth knowing. Didn't react. Not outwardly. Not a flinch, not a scowl, not even the tightening of a jaw. She let the laughter hang there until it lost its energy, until their voices sounded like wind across gravel. She had learned long ago that silence was its own kind of weapon. But inside was something else, a memory sharp and unyielding. Her father's voice from Montana winters. Find the space between heartbeats. That's where the shot lives. It wasn't anger that filled her chest now. It was stillness. That dangerous kind of stillness the young ones couldn't recognize because they'd never had to live in it. Lieutenant Commander Blackwood, tall, chiseled, and full of the kind of certainty that comes from never being proven wrong, strutted in front of them like a man auditioning for his own legend. His words cut toward her like dull knives. "This isn't something you learn from a book, ma'am. This takes instinct, talent." He used "ma'am" like it was a curse. The group closed ranks around him, nodding, feeding off his confidence. Their silence wasn't neutral, it was complicit. They didn't even bother hiding it. She wasn't one of them. Not a warrior. Not an operator. Just a shadow, a clerk signing off ammunition reports, a mother figure too old and too plain to matter in their hard-edged world. Only one pair of eyes studied her differently. Master Sergeant James, weathered and watchful, a man who had survived enough wars to know predators when he saw them. And that was exactly what unsettled him. Wasn't a relic. She was a predator biding her time. Bent lifted the heavy spotting scope and braced it against its tripod with practiced grace. Smooth, efficient, no hesitation. Her hands didn't shake. They had never shaken, not once. Not on the Montana ranges, not on the sand-blown ridges of Iraq, not when the difference between silence and screaming men lay in the space of a single breath. She pretended to adjust the focus, eyes narrowing not on the glass but on the wind. She felt it press against her skin, saw its invisible patterns in the way grass bowed, in the shimmer of heat that bent the horizon. To the rest, it was invisible. To her, it was loud as thunder. Blackwood kept lecturing. Effect, spin, drift. Equations recited like gospel. He sounded like a priest unveiling secrets too sacred for the uninitiated. His acolytes soaked it in, mistaking noise for wisdom. Heard none of it. She was elsewhere, back in another desert, another lifetime, where silence had been her only ally. The Iraqi sun had burned down that day, hammering the rocks around her as she lay prone, body pressed into the earth like it was the only thing that might keep her alive. She had been 17. Too young to be there, officially not even supposed to hold the rifle cradled against her shoulder. But her father had pulled strings, and the war had been hungry, swallowing names faster than they could be recorded. A half-mile away, a convoy of Humvees moved slow, each bump on the road threatening to reveal them. Inside were men she didn't know yet, men who trusted that someone somewhere had their backs. Lieutenant Frank, long before he carried stripes on his arm and decades on his face, moved with confident caution, scanning the terrain. She remembered thinking he seemed unshakable. But then the world split open. The first RPG shrieked from a hidden wadi, tearing the lead Humvee apart in a blossom of fire. Machine gun fire raked the convoy, pinning men down, shredding air with hot metal. Shouts filled the comms. Blood bloomed dark across leg as shrapnel tore into him. Orders crackled through her earpiece. Hold position. Do not engage. QRF inbound. 20 minutes. 20 minutes might as well have been 20 years. She knew they'd never last. Her breath slowed. Numbers slipped into place in her head like pieces of a puzzle. Distance, 870 yards. Wind, 12 meters per second, gusting west. Elevation, bullet drop. She wasn't supposed to fire. But when she saw the RPG lifted again, aimed at men who had no chance to move, she exhaled. 5 shots, one heartbeat after another, each one precise, final. The RPG gunner collapsed, then the machine gunner, then three more, their bodies folding like cut strings. The leader, red scarf bright against the dust, shouted commands, trying to pull the chaos back together. She centered the crosshairs. One more exhale, one more life taken. When the QRF finally arrived, they found survivors clinging to each other in the wreckage. Wounded but alive, muttered something about guardian angels. Later, when the brass tried to calculate the impossible, 6 shots, 6 kills in wind that should have mocked her, her father spoke the only explanation they needed. Shiza. That day she stopped being just a daughter. She became a ghost. And now, years later, on the range, with the young wolves circling and mocking, she heard their laughter as nothing more than echoes. They thought they saw weakness, but she knew the truth. Weakness was noise. Strength was silence. His voice cut the air suddenly, loud enough to freeze the arrogance in its tracks. "Chief Warrant Officer, an honor to have you here today." The younger men shifted, confused. Blackwood bristled at the interruption, but said nothing. She didn't need to. Recognition was already blooming in his eyes, sharp and certain. He had seen her before. Not here, not now, but years ago, in the smoke and blood of wars they never wrote about. Her cover was unraveling, thread by thread. Still she remained silent, watching, waiting, always waiting. Because what none of them knew, not yet, was that she had been sent here under orders. Not to shuffle papers, not to sign reports. She was here to evaluate them, to see if their program still bred warriors or just soldiers who trusted numbers over instincts. And already she had her answer. Blackwood continued, louder, trying to reclaim the room with his voice. But even he felt it, the shift, a weight settling over the range, something unsaid pressing against all of them. She did not move, did not smile, did not blink. But inside, the last Valkyrie knew this was only the beginning. What secret was she still hiding? That was the question burning in the back of Master Sergeant's mind as he stood at the edge of the range, watching the woman everyone else mocked. Had moved like a ghost, silent and economical, her every motion betraying truths the others were too blind or too arrogant to see. She had carried herself not like an administrator, not like a clerk, but like someone who had lived too long with the weight of a rifle pressed into her shoulder. Knew the posture, he knew the stillness, and he knew it terrified him. Blackwood, still full of his own voice, jabbed a finger downrange toward the target village. His words carried like shouts in a cathedral. The ghost scenario, final test. You either make the shot or you fail. There's no middle ground. His team nodded, young faces glowing with confidence that hadn't yet been tested in the crucible of real combat. Said nothing. She simply shifted her weight, steady as stone, eyes narrowing slightly as if to test the air itself. And remembered. It was decades earlier in another mountain range. The Hindu Kush, peaks sharp as knives against the Afghan sky. He'd been younger then, strong but reckless, convinced that war was about firepower and speed. His squad had moved through a narrow valley, unaware of the trap set above. 30 Taliban fighters, armed with RPGs and heavy machine guns, had waited in silence for the moment the SEAL team stepped into their crosshairs. Could still taste the metallic sting of fear that night, the realization that death was about to rain down on all of them. And then death came from another direction. 12 shots, each one landing with brutal precision. RPG gunners dropped, machine gun nests silenced. Confusion spread like wildfire through enemy ranks. By the time the team reached the village, the fighters had fled, convinced they were under siege by an entire battalion. They weren't. They were under the eye of a ghost. Had never forgotten the call sign whispered later that night, Ghost 7, the unseen hand that had saved them all. And now, standing on the range, he realized why his gut had tightened when first bent to lift the scope. He had seen that stillness before. But what haunted him more than recognition was doubt. If she was Ghost 7, if she was the woman who had rewritten the impossible, then why was she here, hidden under paperwork and condescension? What game was being played above his pay grade? Blackwood dismissed the class. He was already bristling from interruption, pride clawing at him like a wound he couldn't cover. His glance toward carried both annoyance and the smallest seed of doubt. Later in the officers' mess, found her sitting alone. She nursed a coffee, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp, scanning personnel files with surgical precision. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "It's a free country, Master Sergeant." He lowered himself into the chair, watching her over the rim of his mug. 2004. Her pen stilled. "I was there," he continued, voice low. "April 7th. My squad pinned down in a courtyard. Suicide bomber coming down the alley. No line of sight. No chance." His throat tightened, memory clawing back into the present. And then the shot, through 3 walls, hit the bomber before he reached us. Saved all our lives. Didn't speak, she didn't have to, saw it in her eyes. Recognition. The kind that bound survivors together. "The report called it luck," he said, "but I knew better. Nobody in could made that shot. Nobody except," he trailed off, searching her face. "You." Silence stretched between them. The mess hall was nearly empty, dishes clattering faintly in the background. Finally she spoke. "Why tell me this now?" "Because I never said thank you," replied. "And because those men out there, they need to understand. They're not training under a bureaucrat. They're training under a guardian angel with a rifle." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I think they figured that out yesterday." "Maybe," he admitted. "But there's knowing and there's understanding. Blackwood, he's never had to watch a man die through a scope. Never had to decide in one breath whether someone lives or doesn't. You have. That changes a person." Her eyes lowered to the file in front of her. 17 times. He knew what she meant. 17 deployments. 17 times carrying the unbearable weight of life and death. She stood, gathering her papers with deliberate calm. "Get some rest, Master Sergeant. Tomorrow will be long." As she turned away, he asked one last question. "That shot in, what was the distance?" She paused. Her voice was quiet but steady. 1,854 meters, 12-meter crosswind, 3 walls. Sat frozen, coffee forgotten. The number was impossible, but then again so was she. The next morning was already on the range before dawn. The air was heavy with salt fog, the targets barely visible in the gloom. Blackwood approached, his usual swagger stripped away, replaced by rigid formality. He stopped in front of her, posture straight as steel. "No excuses," he said. "No justifications. I was wrong, I disrespected you, and I'm asking for your mentorship." Studied him for a long moment. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something closer to humility. She gave a single nod. "Be here at 5:30, and be ready to listen to the wind." Blackwood blinked. "The wind?" "You won't need your rifle today." She held out a blindfold. His pride flickered, but he took it. For 2 hours he stood blindfolded as circled him, pushing him to describe what he could feel, hear, sense. At first his answers were shallow, temperature rising, wind from the west. She pressed harder. "What else?" Gradually, painfully, he began to notice. The difference between air moving across water and across sand. The way grass bent compared to metal frames. The way shifts pressed against his skin a fraction of a second before they arrived. When she finally removed the blindfold, the sun was up. He stared at the range as if seeing it for the first time. "The kestrel is a tool," she said, handing him water. "But it only tells you one point in space. A bullet moves through thousands. You can't outsource that to numbers. You feel it. You listen." Blackwood nodded slowly. "My father used to say something like that. Vietnam vet, 3rd Marines. He told me you had to feel the woods, not just see them." His voice softened. "He died last year." Studied him, her voice quiet. "I'm sorry for your loss." "He wouldn't have made the mistakes I did yesterday." "No," she said, "but he had to learn once too." Blackwood straightened. "Same time tomorrow." She packed her gear with practiced precision. Same time, bring your rifle, we'll see if you've learned to listen. He gave a small nod. Thank you, Chief. She paused, not turning. Don't thank me yet, we've barely begun. Why did the colonel salute her? It happened so quickly the young SEALs almost didn't process it. One moment they were laughing, certain their failure had proved the scenario unbeatable. The next, Colonel, decorated, immovable, feared, walked down from the tower with the kind of slow, deliberate purpose that silenced everything. His eyes swept over them, lingering on Blackwood's clenched jaw before landing on, and instead of lecturing, instead of dismissing, he addressed her in a voice low enough to slice the tension in half. Chief, feel like showing these boys how the old guard gets it done. Her answer wasn't bravado, wasn't noise, just a single short nod. Yes, sir. The range stilled. Instead of touching the SEALs' polished rifles, she walked to a forgotten case at the edge of the line. Old, almost invisible against the gravel. When she cracked it open, silence deepened. Inside lay a relic, an M210 sniper rifle, older, heavier, obsolete by every modern metric. Blackwood's smirk returned, brittle and forced. He crossed his arms, waiting for her humiliation. The others shifted uneasily, caught between skepticism and something else they couldn't name. Assembled the rifle with motion so fluid they felt rehearsed 1,000 times. The parts didn't just click together. They fit like old friends reuniting. She didn't reach for gadgets. No wind meters. No tech. Just a blade of dry grass lifted between her fingers, watched as it fell. Primitive. Simple. Deadly. Then she went still, entirely still. Seconds ticked. A minute, two. Her breathing slowed until it was invisible. And then, without warning, without hesitation, she fired. Not one shot, 7, a rippling thunder too quick to track. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunfire, and then impossibly distant metallic reports, 7, each one announcing a kill. Through the scope's jaws dropped. The high-value target was down, his guards down, a moving vehicle driver down. A hidden sniper in a window none of them had even noticed down. Even the antenna shattered, and the final shot ignited a charge, painting the sky with red smoke. An entire enemy command cell, erased in less than 3 seconds. The SEALs stared, some whispered. Blackwood's lips moved but no sound came out. No, he muttered finally, no one can shoot like that. But someone had. Colonel stepped forward, his boots crunching gravel, his expression like granite carved by time. He put a heavy hand on Blackwood's shoulder, making the younger officer flinch. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but carried the weight of command. Lieutenant, you are about to learn a very important lesson about assumptions. He gestured toward an ensign. Pull her file, read the unclassified summary. The young officer's hands trembled as he tapped the tablet. His voice cracked as he began. Name, rank, Chief Warrant Officer 5. The SEALs exchanged glances. CW5 was the pinnacle, rare, revered, reserved for the absolute masters of their craft. The ensign continued, voice growing steadier with every line. Unit, classified, formerly attached to Joint Special Operations Command. Combat deployments, 17. Combat hours, over 4,000. Primary specialty, Special Operations Target Interdiction. Secondary, high-angle marksmanship instructor, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. The air changed. Group, SEAL Team 6, Legends Among Legends. The ensign swallowed. Awards include the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, and the Distinguished Service Cross. He hesitated. There's also a note from a general. It states, she holds the standing record for the longest confirmed kinetic strike in a combat zone. Distance is classified. The words dropped like stones in water. Ripples spread. Silence deepened. Every ego in the yard bent under the weight of reality. Let it sit. Then he turned to Blackwood, his voice sharper now. Lieutenant, the reason you failed is because she designed this course. She wrote it. The scenario you call impossible. She chose this firing point at this time of year to force you to see beyond numbers, to learn the art, not just the science. That rifle, the one you call obsolete, she used it in the Hindu Kush to dismantle a command unit from 2,200 meters. To you, it's a relic. To her, it's an extension of will. Then in a gesture so heavy it froze time, Colonel faced. He stood tall, straightened, and raised his hand in a deliberate, reverent salute. Not the perfunctory flick of a superior to a subordinate. A true salute, slow, weighted, almost sacred. The kind reserved for legends. "Ma'am," he said, voice thick, "my apologies for the ignorance displayed here today. It will be corrected." His hand snapped up instantly. Then one by one, like dominoes of humility, the young SEALs followed. Their faces burned with shame and awe, no longer saluting a clerk, saluting a ghost. The moment spread faster than wildfire. Before the brass casings cooled, whispers traveled the barracks. The story twisted into legend. By nightfall, the phrase "don't get" had entered their lexicon, a warning against arrogance. But herself, she didn't bask, didn't glow. She quietly broke down the rifle piece by piece, slipping it back into its case. Her work in her eyes was done. That night Blackwood didn't sleep. By dawn he stood outside her office, uniform pressed, posture stiff. No swagger, no arrogance, just humility. When she emerged, he snapped to attention. "I was wrong," he said simply, "about everything, and I'm asking to learn to listen." She studied him, unreadable in the gray fog. Then, "Be on the range at 5:30. Bring nothing but your patience." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't absolution, it was something more dangerous, a second chance. And Blackwood, for the first time, didn't smirk, he just nodded. Because deep down, he finally understood what terrified him most. This wasn't about making impossible shots. It wasn't about records or medals. It was about something far heavier. The measure of a warrior's worth. And he was only just beginning to glimpse hers. Why was Captain Mitchell really here? The question landed before even saw his face. It was just before dawn, the firing range still cloaked in shadow, the sea air cold and damp. She had set the course herself, thermal reactive targets hidden out past 3,000 yards, a wind that shifted unpredictably with every gust rolling in from the Pacific. A perfect lesson in patience. But the footsteps approaching were Blackwood's, too heavy, too measured. When she turned, she found him there, Captain Frank Mitchell, Force Recon veteran, a man who wore his scars like armor. His jaw was clenched, eyes hard. "You're up early," said evenly, not breaking stride as she set the last target marker. "Couldn't sleep," he muttered. His gaze flicked to her bag, her equipment. "Heard there's quite the circus out here." "Just training." "Training," he echoed, a bitter laugh escaping him. "That's what they're calling it. I call it disruption, undermining the pipeline." Didn't look up. She was tired of this argument, tired of the same walls erected in different uniforms. If disruption means higher qualification scores, then I'll plead guilty. Mitchell stepped closer, the dim light catching the hard planes of his face. "This isn't about scores. This is about you trying to prove something. Again, just like at Bennying." That name cut sharper than she expected. She finally stopped what she was doing, faced him head-on. "What's your issue with me, Mitchell? Because this isn't professional disagreement anymore. This is personal." His laugh was harsh, hollow. My issue is that you're dangerous. Not because you can shoot. Plenty of people can shoot. You're dangerous because you make people believe exceptions should be the rule." Her eyes narrowed. "I've never once asked for lowered standards. Never." "No," he snapped, his voice low and raw, "but you exist. And that's enough. The next woman comes along, can't make the cut, points to you as proof that she should still belong. And then what? We compromise. We bend. And the men who depend on each other completely end up dead." His words were fire, but underneath she heard it. The crack, the wound. "This isn't about me," she said quietly. "This is about Kandahar, isn't it?" His face twitched, color draining. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I think I do," she pressed. "Operation Copper Dune 2011, your team compromised, 2 men lost. The after-action report blamed equipment failure. But I read the full file, Mitchell, even the redacted parts. It wasn't the rifles, it was the plan. The insertion point was bad. The route compromised. Command arrogance cost those men their lives, and you've been carrying it ever since." For a heartbeat, he faltered. The truth hit him like a round to the chest. But then his walls went back up. He sneered. "You don't belong here. You never did. You're playing a game where the stakes are men's lives." Before she could answer, another voice sliced the morning air. "The only one playing games is you, Captain." Blackwood stepped from the shadows, his rifle slung but his eyes hard, cold with something hadn't seen in him before: conviction. He moved deliberately to her side, shoulder squared to hers, not in front of her, not behind. Beside. "This doesn't concern you," Mitchell snapped. "When you corner my instructor at 0:30, it concerns me," Blackwood shot back. "Chief has my confidence, and the confidence of every operator she's trained this week. Whatever grudge you're carrying, leave it off my range." Mitchell's nostrils flared. "Careful, Lieutenant. You're betting your career on the wrong horse." "I'm betting my career on becoming the best shooter I can be," Blackwood countered. His jaw tightened. "And right now, that means learning from her." For a moment, thought Mitchell might swing. His fists clenched, shoulders coiled. But finally, with a sound half growl, half defeat, he turned and stalked into the darkness. Only when his footsteps vanished did speak. "I didn't need your help." "I know," Blackwood replied evenly. But what he was saying, it was wrong, and someone needed to tell him so. She studied him, searching for arrogance. It wasn't there, only sincerity, and maybe something more, something that reminded her of another man decades ago who had once stood with her when others dismissed her. "Your father," she said slowly, "would be proud." Blackwood blinked, throat tightening. "I hope so." Then, with an edge of steel, "Now, you mentioned something about shooting in the dark." Almost smiled, almost. "Let's get to work." That morning stretched into hours. Night vision targets glowed faintly on the far hills. The wind turned cruel, shifting with invisible hands. Blackwood and the others pushed themselves until sweat stung their eyes and exhaustion dulled their reflexes. Pushed harder. No excuses. No shortcuts. By 900 they were spent, slumped against their packs, breaths ragged. But their shots, than ever, impossible distances had begun to feel possible. Colonel arrived just as was resetting the range. But he wasn't alone. With him came a man in a suit, silver hair, understated tie, the kind of presence that screamed Washington. Waited until finished. "Chief," he said, tone formal, "this is Mr. Department of Defense." The civilian extended a hand. "Chief, I've heard remarkable things about your methods." "They're not remarkable," she said flatly, shaking his hand. "They're basics, fundamentals everyone's forgotten in favor of gadgets." "Be that as it may," replied, "the results speak for themselves. Qualification scores have risen 38% in 1 week. Unprecedented." His posture shifted, guarded. What does Duty want with a sniper instructor? And shared a glance. Finally said, "There's a proposal, a new program, to formalize your methods across all special operations schools, with you as program director." Her stomach clenched. Director, the word tasted like a cage. "And my operational status?" she asked coolly. "Would have to be reevaluated," admitted. Translation, they wanted her behind a desk. "I'll need time to consider it," she said evenly. "Of course," smiled thinly. "But don't take too long. The secretary is very enthusiastic." They left, but their presence lingered like smoke. Later, as she cleaned her rifle, Blackwood ventured carefully. "They want to pull you off the line, don't they?" "You're more perceptive than I gave you credit for," she said without looking up. "I had a good teacher this week," he said, smiling faintly. His hands stilled on the bolt. She looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the arrogant lieutenant who had once mocked her. He was changing, learning, listening. They want to turn this into a program, she admitted. Me behind a desk instead of behind a rifle. Would that be so bad? You'd influence the entire community, not just one class. Maybe, she allowed. But teaching theory isn't the same as demonstrating reality. I didn't sign up to shuffle papers. He hesitated, then asked softly, "Why did you sign up?" Her answer came slow, measured. "To serve, like you, like every man and woman in uniform, but how I serve, that's always been on my terms." Her eyes softened, uncharacteristically open. "Some people are meant for the field, Blackwood. I'm one of them." He nodded, the understanding mutual. "Now," she said, snapping her case shut, "tomorrow 400, you'll learn about shooting in the dark." The way she said it, he understood she wasn't just talking about marksmanship. The truth is, she had always been in the dark, trained in it, lived in it. Her father hadn't raised a daughter. He had raised an heir. Every snowy Montana night, every blindfold drill, every impossible distance, it hadn't been parenting, it had been preparation. For what she still didn't know. But the shadows were closing in. And somewhere in those shadows, old ghosts stirred. Who was, and why did his name still haunt her? The first time heard it again, it wasn't through official channels. Not from, it came whispered, almost like a rumor, drifting across the barracks like smoke. Alive. Active. She froze where she stood. For a moment, the world around her muted, the clang of weights, the chatter of sailors, the distant surf. All of it disappeared, replaced by memories sharp as broken glass. The Russian sniper had been her shadow for years. They had danced across ruined cities and broken hillsides, hunter and hunted, predator and prey. He had always been close, always watching, always just out of reach. She thought it ended in the mountains of Georgia when his rifle went silent and his trail disappeared into the snow. She had convinced herself he was gone, dead, another ghost in a world full of them. But ghosts don't die, they wait. That night in her quarters, she spread maps across her desk. Current intel mixed with memories she hadn't let herself relive. A pattern emerged: unrest in Eastern Europe, sabotage operations with signatures too clean, too precise. The rumors weren't rumors. They were breadcrumbs, and the hand leaving them. Her hand lingered on a photograph. A man in shadows, half his face obscured, but the eyes cold, calculating, familiar. She felt her chest tighten. She whispered to the empty room, "I should have finished it." The next morning she was different. The recruits noticed. Blackwood noticed. Her instruction, usually patient but sharp, had turned harder, clipped. Every drill became harsher. Miss a shot by an inch and she reset the exercise. Show fatigue and she doubled the workload. Finally, after hours of relentless pace, Blackwood confronted her. "What's going on with you?" Didn't look up from adjusting her rifle. "Focus on your target, Lieutenant." "I am focused," he shot back, his voice raw with exhaustion. "Focused enough to see something eating you alive. This isn't training anymore. This is punishment." Her eyes snapped up, cold and unflinching. "You think war cares if you're tired. You think we'll give you a breather because your hands are sore. Weakness doesn't get corrected by sympathy, Lieutenant. It gets corrected by pain." The name slipped out before she could stop it. Blackwood frowned. "Who the hell is?" Her silence was an answer of its own, but he pressed, "Tell me." Stared at him, weighing the risk. He wasn't ready. None of them were, but the truth had already cracked through. He's the shadow every sniper dreads, the one you never see, only feel, the one who makes the world quiet before he takes everything from you. She turned away, voice low, "And he's back." Later that day, in the secure comms room, confirmed it. "We've had chatter. Russian black ops, Eastern Bloc destabilization. The signature is his." Leaned against the table, jaw tight. "I put a round in him." Nodded grimly, apparently not deep enough. Folded his arms. "That's why the program matters more than ever. isn't just an enemy sniper, he's a myth. If he resurfaces, our operators need the antidote. They need your methods, your instincts, the Valkyrie doctrine. The word stopped her cold. Valkyrie. It was more than a name. It was the buried deep in classified files, the program she had lived and bled for. The reason she had disappeared from official rosters, the reason even her victories had been erased or credited to others. The Valkyrie program had been her crucible and her cage. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't use that name like it's a recruitment slogan." His tone softened, but only slightly. "You built it, you perfected it, and now it's needed again." She shook her head. "You don't resurrect Valkyrie, not without a cost." Studied her carefully. "What cost, Chief?" Her eyes were far away, seeing deserts, mountains, streets slick with blood. "Pieces of yourself you don't get back." The room went quiet. "Finally broke it. Then give them the chance to decide for themselves. Train them. Show them the truth. They can choose if they want to carry that burden." Said nothing, but inside she knew the truth. Choice was an illusion. Once you stepped into the shadows, you never walked back out. That evening, Blackwood found her on the cliffside overlooking the Pacific. The sky was bruised purple, waves crashing against stone. She didn't acknowledge him at first. He just stood beside her, letting the silence breathe. Finally he asked, "You going after him?" Her eyes stayed on the horizon. "If I don't, no one else will survive him. You can't carry this alone." She turned to him, expression unreadable. "You think you're ready to walk into the dark with me, Lieutenant? You're not. Not yet." "Then make me ready," he said fiercely. "Don't shut me out." She studied him, really studied him. He wasn't the arrogant voice mocking her anymore. He wasn't even the humbled student. He was something else now, someone willing to bear weight not his own. "You want to understand me?" she asked quietly. "Yes." "Then you need to know the truth about Valkyrie." She told him everything. Not all at once, not like a briefing, but piece by piece, the way wounds are cleaned, slowly, painfully. Valkyrie wasn't a unit. It was an experiment. A handful of operatives pulled from different branches, stripped of names, ranks, and recognition. They became shadows, ghosts with no country, no past, no future. Every mission deniable, every success buried, every mistake unforgivable. She was Valkyrie 1, the only one who survived long enough to carry the name. "I stopped being the day they put that number on me," she said. "From then on, I was just the hand of the rifle, a weapon." Blackwood's voice was hushed, and she looked away. The mirror image, Russia's answer to Valkyrie, same doctrine, same erasure. He was their ghost. We crossed paths more times than I can count. Each time only one of us walked away. Each time it was closer. Her hands tightened on the railing. "He taught me more about myself than any commander ever did, because facing him meant facing what I had become, and what I'd lost." Blackwood swallowed hard. "What did you lose?" She turned, eyes meeting his with a weight he couldn't hold for long. "Everything human." For a long moment, the only sound was the ocean crashing below. Then she said, almost to herself, "If he's back, it means the past isn't finished with me." That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Memories clawed their way back. His breath in the ruins of Grozny. His bullet shattering stone inches from her face. His laugh, low and mocking, across a frozen gorge when both their rifles clicked empty and they were reduced to knives and shadows. The scar on her shoulder burned phantom hot, as if the blade that gave it still lingered. She whispered to the darkness, "I should have ended you." And in the quiet, for the first time in years, she wondered if maybe he whispered the same. Why did the order come in her name? The briefing room was dark, lit only by a projector that hummed faintly against the wall. Maps of Eastern Europe glowed with circles and arrows, operations layered in colors of secrecy. Sat in the back, silent, as younger officers filled the space with chatter. Blackwood leaned forward beside her, trying to read the map, but his eyes kept drifting to her face. Colonel entered, his voice heavy. Tasking just came through Joint Command. There's been an assassination attempt in Warsaw, clean, precise, and surgical. Only one man alive could pull it off. You all know his name. The room shifted uneasily. They did know. Gaze flicked toward the back, too. The word hit the air like a hammer. But then came the second blow. Tapped the screen, revealing a forged order packet recovered from the site. And there it was, black and white, stamped and authenticated. The operation had been executed under her call sign, Valkyrie 1. A murmur rippled across the room. Some turned toward her in shock, others in suspicion. Sat stone still, her face unreadable. Voice cut the noise. This is a smear, psychological warfare, framing you, but Washington wants answers. They want proof you're not compromised. Her jaw clenched. The past wasn't just returning, it was dragging her name with it. That night she stripped her rifle down piece by piece, cleaning it in silence. Each part clicked into her hands like beads on a rosary. But this wasn't prayer. It was ritual, memory. Blackwood entered quietly, closing the door behind him. They think you did it. They think what they're told, she answered without looking up. Then prove them wrong. She finally glanced at him. His face was raw with conviction, the kind of fire she remembered in men long dead. You don't understand. They don't want proof. They want certainty, and certainty doesn't exist in this world. Then make them believe, he pressed. You're not just some ghost hiding in the shadows. You're flesh and blood, and you've saved more lives than anyone in that briefing room will ever know. Her hand stilled on the rifle bolt. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, softly, "You really believe that?" "I do." The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken things. Finally she stood, snapping the rifle back together with surgical speed. "Then you'd better be ready, because if, hunting me, he'll use you to get to me." Blackwood swallowed. "Then I'll be bait." She almost laughed, the sound low and bitter. "Careful what you offer, Lieutenant. Doesn't leave bait alive." Days later the order came down. Unofficial, deniable, buried in layers of classification. Was to be observed in the field, her loyalty tested, her methods scrutinized. Officially she was training. Unofficially she was bait herself. The mission, a recon sweep along the borderlands of Ukraine. Rumors of presence had into patterns. Sniper kills too clean, too calculated. Small units wiped out with surgical precision. The kind of work that left commanders whispering about ghosts. And Blackwood moved under cover of a NATO training exercise, their presence explained away as liaison observers. But everyone knew, everyone whispered. The first night in the field was cold, the kind of cold that seeped into bone. They lay prone on a ridge, scopes sweeping the darkened village below. Blackwood shifted slightly, trying to keep circulation in his hands. "Still think you want this life?" she asked quietly, eyes never leaving her scope. He hesitated. "I didn't, not until I met you." Her lips pressed thin. "Don't follow me, Blackwood. You won't like where I'm going." "I'll decide that," he whispered. She said nothing. Hours passed. The village below stayed silent, but instincts prickled. Something was off, too still, too quiet. The absence of noise was its own warning. And then, without a sound, without a flash, the earth beside her head exploded in a burst of dirt. She rolled instantly, dragging Blackwood with her, as another round chewed through where they had just been. He gasped, "Where?" "Don't look for him," she snapped. "He's already watching you." Her heart hammered, but her breath stayed even. Was here, close. And worse, he was playing with her. They crawled inch by inch, using terrain for cover. Another shot cracked, closer this time, grazing Blackwood's pack. His breathing hitched, panic flaring. "Steady," she whispered. "He wants you to panic, don't give him what he wants." "How do we fight something we can't see?" Her eyes narrowed, scanning the darkness. "By becoming something he can't predict." Hours turned into days. It wasn't combat. It was a hunt, cat and mouse, but which was which? Left traces only she could read, subtle mocking. A broken branch here, a spent casing there. He wanted her to follow. He wanted her to remember. Each night felt the weight of her past press heavier. Every scar, every ghost, every secret mission she'd buried clawed back to life. She didn't tell Blackwood, but she knew what was doing. He wasn't trying to kill her, not yet. He was trying to break her. By the third night, Blackwood had grown quieter, more focused. He didn't crack jokes anymore. He didn't smirk. He just moved where she told him, learned the rhythm of silence, began to feel the world instead of just seeing it. She watched him in stolen glances, watched the arrogance fall away, replaced by something rarer, humility, resilience. It almost scared her, how much she wanted him to survive this. The moment came at dawn. Mist rolled over the valley, thick and shifting. Through her scope she saw it, the faintest shimmer, the subtle glint of glass just where it shouldn't be. Her breath slowed, her finger curled against the trigger. The world narrowed to that single shimmer. But before she fired, another shot rang out. The tree beside her split, bark exploding inches from her face. He had fired first. And he had missed. Not by accident, on purpose. A warning. Blackwood's whisper cracked in her ear, "Take him." Her finger tightened, but she hesitated. Because in that hesitation, she realized the truth. Wasn't here to kill her, not yet. He was inviting her. Daring her. And when she finally fired, her bullet shattered only branches. The shimmer vanished. The valley returned to silence. Blackwood cursed, "You had him, why didn't you?" She cut him off. "Because that's what he wanted. If I'd taken that shot, I'd be dead right now." Confusion and fear warred on his face. "Then what do we do?" She lowered her rifle, eyes still locked on the valley. "We wait," she said softly, "because this isn't a battle. This is a summons. He's calling me out, and if I answer—" Her voice trailed off, heavy with things unsaid. "One of us doesn't walk away." Why didn't she take the shot? The question burned in Blackwood's chest long after they'd withdrawn from the ridge. Every instinct screamed at him, kill the enemy, end the threat, survive, yet had let the moment pass. He trailed behind her in silence as they hiked back through the mist, exhaustion etched into his bones. Finally, when they stopped to rest in the hollow of a crumbling barn, he couldn't hold it in any more. "You had him, I saw it. He was right there in your scope." Didn't look at him. She methodically the sling around her rifle, as if his words were background noise. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't you finish it?" Her eyes lifted then, dark and steady. "Because doesn't make mistakes. If he wanted me dead, I'd be dead. That shimmer you saw, it wasn't an opportunity. It was bait. He wanted me to fire to reveal myself. The second I pulled the trigger, he'd have ended me." Blackwood's jaw tightened. "So what, we just let him toy with us? Keep running, keep hiding?" "This isn't hide and seek," she said sharply. "It's chess, and right now he's 2 moves ahead." Blackwood turned away, frustration boiling. He hated this feeling, the helplessness, the way the enemy seemed untouchable. And worse, he hated the calm in her voice, as if she accepted it. But beneath his anger was something else, fear. Fear not for himself, but for her. That night they camped in the ruins of an abandoned farmhouse. Rain hammered the roof, leaking through holes to drip into puddles around them. Sat against the wall, cleaning her rifle in silence. Blackwood lay nearby, staring at the ceiling, words tangled on his tongue. Finally he said it. "You're planning to face him, aren't you?" Her hands stilled on the bolt. She didn't answer. "That's why you're here," he pressed. "Not to train me, not for the program. You came because you knew he'd come back, because this is personal." She looked at him then, her expression unreadable. "Personal doesn't cover it." "Then what does?" Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "And we're the same. built by different nations, different flags, but shaped into the same weapon. Two ghosts in a world that doesn't want us anymore. Every time we crossed paths, it wasn't just survival. It was recognition, like looking in a broken mirror. Blackwood swallowed. That doesn't mean you have to finish it. Yes, she said softly, it does, because he won't stop. And if he isn't ended, someone else will pay the price. Her eyes dropped to the rifle in her lap. That's what you don't understand yet. This isn't about pride. It's about mercy. Ending him is the only mercy left for both of us. The words hung heavy between them. At dawn, a voice crackled in their comms. Intel confirms movements. Satellite tracked him heading west into the, "We're pulling you back to base. Repeat, disengage, do not pursue." Blackwood exhaled in relief, but's face didn't change. She didn't even acknowledge the order. After a long silence, she packed her gear. "You're not going back," Blackwood realized. "No." "Then I'm coming with you." Her head snapped toward him. "Absolutely not." "You don't get to decide that," he fired back. "You think I trained under you just to stand on the sidelines. I'm not walking away while you march into this alone." Her voice hardened. "You don't understand what you're asking. Following me into this fight isn't courage, it's suicide." "Then let it be suicide," he said fiercely, "because I'm not letting you disappear into the dark without someone at your side." For the first time, her composure cracked. A flicker of something, pain, maybe fear, crossed her face. "You don't owe me that," she whispered. He held her gaze. "I know, that's why it matters." They moved into the mountains together, the air thinning, the forest closing around them. Days blurred into nights, each step forward pulling them deeper into his web. And he was there, always there, not seen but felt. A broken twig where no one should have walked, a trail of blood leading nowhere, a whisper on the wind that carried no source. Grew quieter, more inward. She stopped speaking unless necessary. Her eyes grew haunted, distant. Blackwood realized she wasn't just preparing for a fight, she was preparing for an ending. On the third night, as they lay beneath a canopy of skeletal trees, she finally spoke. "I used to believe dignity came from recognition," she said softly. "From medals, salutes, names etched on walls. But after Valkyrie, I learned it's something else. Dignity is silence, doing the work no one sees, carrying burdens no one will ever thank you for." Blackwood turned his head toward her. "That's not dignity, that's loneliness." She gave a faint smile, sad and tired. "Sometimes they're the same." The final sign came at dawn. A white cloth pinned to a tree with a bullet fluttered in the wind. Written across it in English scrawled by a foreign hand, "Valkyrie 1, come alone." Blackwood cursed it under his breath. "It's a trap." "Of course it is," said calmly. "Then why walk into it?" Her voice was steady, resigned. "Because if I don't, he'll never stop. He'll hunt and he'll kill, and every time someone else will bleed in my place. This ends with me." Blackwood grabbed her arm. "Then take me with you." She shook her head. "No, he asked for me, not us. If you come, he'll use you, and I won't risk that." "Then what am I supposed to do? Just wait here while you walk into his sights?" Her eyes softened. For the first time, she reached out and rested her hand briefly on his shoulder. "You've already given me more than anyone else ever has. You believed me. That matters. Don't think it doesn't." He felt his throat tighten. "If you don't come back." "I won't," she interrupted, her voice quiet but final. "Not the same anyway." And with that, she shouldered her rifle and walked into the mist. Blackwood stood frozen, watching her disappear, his fists clenched helplessly at his sides. He whispered into the emptiness, "Come back, Chief, please." But the forest gave no answer. Only silence. And in that silence, miles away, another man waited. He adjusted the scope of his rifle with slow precision, a faint smile curling his lips. "She comes," he murmured in Russian, voice low and satisfied. "At last she comes." The hunt was ending. And one way or another, so were they. Why did she feel calm, walking to her own death? The forest mist curled around boots as she stepped deeper into The ground was soft with rot, the trees towering like watchful sentinels. Every sense was sharpened, her breathing steady, each step measured. She carried her rifle, but more than that, she carried every ghost that had brought her here. Wanted her alone, and she was. Her instincts screamed ambush, screamed trap, screamed that no one who walked into this circle walked back out. But beneath it all was calm. The kind of calm born when choices no longer exist, when the only path forward is acceptance. The clearing appeared suddenly, an open wound in the forest. At its far edge, a figure stood. He was older like her. Weathered-lined, his hair once black was streaked with gray, but the eyes were the same, cold, calculating, familiar, a mirror. His rifle rested casually in his hands, but not raised. Not yet. They stared across the space between them, silent. Finally he spoke, his English thick with accent. Valkyrie won. Her jaw tightened. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. So many years, so many ghosts, and still we walk. Why now, she asked. He tilted his head. Because time runs thin. Because we are relics, you and I, our nations, our commanders, they have forgotten us, buried us. But still, only one can remain. You could stayed buried, she said coldly. You didn't have to resurface. Neither did you, he countered, but here we are. The mist thickened, the silence stretching. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he lifted his rifle. So did she. For long moments, neither moved. Two predators locked in perfect stillness, each waiting for the other to blink, to shift, to betray the smallest weakness. She felt the air on her skin, every change in the wind. She measured the distance, the angle, the cover. But more than that, she measured him, his patience, his breathing, the faint tremor in his left hand, age, not nerves. He was still deadly, but he was no longer invincible. His voice broke the silence. Do you remember Grozny, the alley with the broken church bell? I remember, she said flatly. You let me live that night. No, she corrected softly, you escaped. His faint smile widened. Perhaps, or perhaps you chose. Her grip tightened on the rifle. Not today. His eyes hardened. No, not today. And then the clearing erupted. Two shots cracked near simultaneous, thunder rolling through the forest, bark splintered, stone chipped, birds exploded from the trees. They rolled, shifted, vanished into cover. The duel began. It wasn't like in the movies, no long speeches, no endless bursts of fire. It was silence, patience, precision, a war of breaths and shadows. Crawled through wet leaves, every nerve alive. Round tore the earth inches from her elbow. She shifted, exhaled, fired. His silhouette dropped, but only a decoy. He was already flanking. Minutes stretched like hours. Each move was countered, each feint mirrored. They knew each other too well. Every trick, every deception had been rehearsed in battles past. And yet, felt it, he was slower, not weaker but older, less certain. And for the first time she realized this wasn't just her hunt, it was his farewell. Wanted this, not to win, to end. The breaking point came at the ridge. She had circled wide, climbing through thick brush. When she crested, she saw him below, exposed, his rifle aimed elsewhere. Her breath steadied, finger curling on the trigger. But then he turned, slowly, deliberately, and lowered his weapon. Her scope filled with his face, the faintest nod. Permission, invitation. Do it, his lips formed silently. She froze. For all the years of chasing, of fearing, of fighting, now at the end he was offering her the choice. Her heart hammered. She saw every ghost, every mission, every moment where the line blurred between duty and damnation. She saw herself in him. She saw what she'd lost. Her finger trembled. And then she exhaled. The shot cracked through the valley. Staggered, eyes wide, a faint smile ghosting his lips. He sank to the ground slowly as if bowing before the forest swallowed him for good. Silence followed, not triumph, not relief, just silence. She didn't remember walking back. The world blurred. The rifle weighed heavy in her hands, heavier than it ever had. When she reached the farmhouse, Blackwood was there, packing, frantic, his face pale. When he saw her, his breath hitched. "You're alive." She nodded once, said nothing. "Did you?" he asked, voice faltering. She set the rifle down. Her hands lingered on it, then pushed it away, as if it no longer belonged to her. Blackwood saw it in her eyes, the answer she didn't give. He didn't press. Instead, he sat beside her in silence. For a long time they didn't speak. The rain dripped through the ceiling. The fire cracked faintly. Finally she whispered, almost to herself, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." Blackwood turned to her, words on his lips, but stopped, because he understood. She had carried the burden alone, chosen alone, acted alone. And in that silence, in that unspoken truth, Valkyrie One closed her eyes. Not in peace, not in victory, but in dignity. And somewhere in the shadows of history, another ghost faded from the ledger. One less name whispered. One less hunter waiting in the dark.